On today's episode of Locked On Wild, if we were to rank the Central Division goalies, how far up the list do you think Filip Gustavsson sits?
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms as well as on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we're talking all things goalies in the Central Division. We'll rank the starters. We'll talk about the backups, including Jesper Wallstedt and what can be expected from them this season. We'll also talk about the upcoming negotiations, not for Kirill, but for Gustafson. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, credentialed media member for the 2025-2026 season, and host of Seth on Sports. And we're back today. I'm not going to lie. I just had to completely step away after the Kaprizov stuff just has exploded. And really, frankly, there's no new updates. So we're going to move on to other things. There's nothing new to report. And I think every angle of it has been talked to death. So we're going to move to other parts of the team. Training camp officially starts tomorrow. And there's plenty to discuss with the Minnesota Wild, with or without 97. There's plenty to discuss going into the start of the season. So I wanted to kind of finish up. Earlier last week, we started some rankings, looking at the offense, and I wanted to now dive into the goalies. Pretty important as far as team success goes, and there are some pretty good ones in the Central Division and throughout the NHL as well. But I wanted this talk to start with Filip Gustavsson because Filip Gustavsson going into the final year of his deal, and he is going to be eligible for an extension if the Wild should choose to pursue it. Gustafson this past season, 31, 19, and 6, a 2.56 goals against average, a 914 save percentage. He had a 2.71 goals against average and a 913 save percentage in the playoffs. Obviously went 2-3. Because the Wild, they lost in 6. Now, if you look at what Filip Gustavsson has done over the last few seasons since he took over as the starter, he has won 22 games, 20, and now 31. So all told, he has 73 wins with the Minnesota Wild over the last 30 seasons. His numbers, they started off fantastic. His first year as the starter for the Wild, 2.10 goals against average, a 931 save percentage. Then in 2023-2024, little bit of a step back, 3.06 goals against average and an 899 save percentage. And then this past season, as we mentioned, 2.56 goals against average and a 914 save percentage. Now, the 2023-2024 season was a season in which I think a couple of really not ideal months really buoyed his numbers. If you look at where Filip Gustavsson was at, as far as a statistical percentage goes, statistics wise, in that 2023-2024 season, started off pretty bad. He was 2-1 through the month of October, 4.36 goals against average and an 885 save percentage. It's funny because he started the season with a 2-0 shutout win over the Florida Panthers, but then gave up 7 goals to Toronto, gave up 5 goals to Columbus, gave up 6 goals to the Flyers, gave up 4 goals in a win to the Edmonton Oilers. But then you look, and he had a rough go in his first start in November, gave up 5 goals against the Devils. After that, he didn't give up more than 3 goals in any of his starts the rest of the month. He only gave up more than 3 goals once in the month of December and looked much more like the Filip Gustavsson we are used to seeing. Then his month of January was buoyed by 2 bad starts. Lost to Arizona, gave up 5 goals in less than 2 periods. In 26 minutes, gave up 5 goals, and then gave up 7 goals in his next start against the Tampa Bay Lightning. After that, he went on a nice little run again. We fast forward to February 19th, gives up 5 goals against Vancouver, 6 goals against Nashville. Other than that, he was relatively solid the rest of the month. Went crazy down the stretch, was great in March, and his April starts not all that great. So it just was inconsistent for Gustafson in the 2023-2024 season, but the Gus that we have come to know was still hiding in there. He just popped he just popped in and out throughout the course of the year. Now, to be fair, the play in front of him for most of that season, not great. That was the year that the Wild missed the playoffs. Dean Evason got fired after the awful start. John Hines came in to try to resuscitate the team, and they were in the playoff consideration until the final couple of weeks of the season, and then got mathematically eliminated. They played better under Hines, but they dug themselves way too big of a hole. And then this past season, you look at what we saw from Gus, and he got off to a great start. 4-1-1, 2.17 goals against average, and a .922 save percentage. Through the month of December, he was even better. 7-3-2, a goals against average under 2, a .932 save percentage. He had 2 shutouts, including a 39 save shutout against Buffalo, and had a 19 save shutout against the Montreal Canadiens. He had the goalie goal early on in the season against St. Louis. So it was the Gus that we had come to know. Started to give up a few more goals in December, but still racked up the wins. January was arguably his worst month of the season. February was better. March was great. And April was so-so. And then had, I thought, played well in the postseason against the Vegas Golden Knights. Just came up on the wrong end. And had a goal or two that he would have loved to get back in that series as well. So all told, solid season for Gus. And 2 out of the 3 seasons that he has been the starter, he's been rock solid. And even the year that he wasn't, he still had some solid months for the team. Just couldn't quite string a full good season together. So Gustafson, the 73 wins, as I mentioned, since he took over as a starter, he has cemented himself as definitely a starter caliber goalie in the Central Division. But where does he rank amongst the rest of the starting goalies in the Central Division? We'll tackle that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Minnesota Vikings take on the Cincinnati Bengals this weekend. Possible chance for a little bounce back after a rough go against the Atlanta Falcons. No Joe Burrow, and maybe Carson Wentz can get it done. So if you're feeling like the Vikings will bounce back, that's a great spot to start. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We are your team each and every day as well. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. As we gear up for the start of training camp, we're gonna get ourselves back into the regular week routine, and I will tell you that there are not going to be as many postcasts this year as there were last year. It's not going to be possible with my schedule, with the 3 different schedules that I'll be juggling in addition to the Minnesota Wild, but they are going to be scheduled in advance. So when we do a postcast, you'll know in advance. I think that's a good compromise, as opposed to trying to do one every game and just not being able to deliver that. I think that's a good compromise, is to just schedule out what we can do and doing those in a solid manner, in a great manner. And there just are some games where we're going to have to just give you a recap of it once the game is done. And I'm working on some ideas for that as well. So let's take a look at the Central Division goalies and rank them. Rank the starters 1 through 8 as a combination of, statistics over the last few seasons, general pedigree, and we'll see where we get. Obviously, any goalie ranking has to start with Connor Hellebuyck at the top. He's the best goalie that is on the planet right now. I know that he tends to kind of run out of gas at the end of the season. That might have something to do with the fact that Winnipeg just keeps trotting him out there 60-plus games a year. But statistically, he is head and shoulders above every other goalie in the league. And until he retires or until he substantially starts to fall off, there's really no debate as to who is number 1 on that list. Number 2 on the list is where we can start to have the conversation, because according to NHL.com this past season, next on the list as far as goals go amongst Central Division goalies was Jake Oettinger at 36, 18, and 4. He made 58 starts, which was the same amount as Fiilip Gustavsson. He had a 2.59 goals against average and a 909 save percentage. So his numbers actually were slightly worse than Fiilip Gustavsson's. Oettinger had 2 shutouts. Fiilip Gustavsson had 5. And so we're not gonna throw in as of yet. I'm just talking this out. So then Gustafson is third with 31 wins. After that, you go to Mackenzie Blackwood with 28. Jordan Binnington also had 28. Then if we keep going down the list, I believe I was going to say, that doesn't make sense. Kirill Vejmelka was next after that with 26 wins. And there were a couple of different people that got starts for Chicago last year that are not currently on the team. So Chicago is going to be a little bit of a mess as far as the goalie situation goes, because you got Spencer Knight that came in midway through the season, and he's expected to be the starter for the Blackhawks going forward. Arvid Soderblom led the current goalie room with starts. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do, based off of pedigree, based off of what has been done the last couple of seasons, I'm going to go Jake Oettinger next. I'm going to go Jake Oettinger at number 2. And then I think I'm going to go Fiilip Gustavsson at 3. I think that is perfectly reasonable to have Gustafson be next on the list. As far as goalie wins over the last 3 seasons, Connor Hellebuyck is first with 121. Jake Oettinger is second with 108. Filip Gustavsson is 13th with those 73, just 10 behind Jordan Binnington in that same span, and almost 30 fewer starts. UC Saros also in there. So we're going to go Hellebuyck. We're going to go Binnington. And then I'm going to, or not Binnington, Oettinger. Hellebuyck, Oettinger. I'm going to go based off of what we've seen the last couple of seasons. I'm going to go with Gustafson third. Then I think he had a pretty down season this past year. But it's hard to argue with the numbers that UC Saros puts up on a yearly basis. Like this past season, Saros had 20 wins. He still made 58 starts. But you look at where it ranks compared to his typical season. Like he had 33 or more wins the previous 3 seasons. His goals against average was between 2.6 and 2.86. Save percentage between 906 and 919. And then this past year, he went 20, 31, and 6 with a 2.98 goals against average and an 896 save percentage. I'm going to put UC Saros. I'm going to assume that it's a blip. I'm going to assume that it's a blip, and I'm going to put UC Saros 4th. I'm going to put Jordan Binnington 5th amongst Central Division goalies. Binnington obviously has the second most tenure amongst Central Division goalies behind Connor Hellebuyck. Binnington this past season, 2.69 goals against average, a 90 save percentage. He's been a 28, 27 win goalie the last 3 seasons. Makes between 55 and 60 starts. But, you know, the peripheral numbers, they've varied, and they just aren't they're not what I would call that like top level goalie level, if that makes sense. So I'm putting Binnington 5th. Then you look at the rest of the goalies in the Central Division. You've got the Utah situation, you've got Chicago, and you have the Colorado Avalanche. And it's interesting because you look at the year that Mackenzie Blackwood had this past season, and you would assume that, he had a 2.33 goals against average and a 913 save percentage with the Blackhawks, 22, 12, and 3 down the stretch. He was 6, 9, and 3 with the Sharks. You'd assume that you'd put Blackwood higher because of the upside. Well, we don't know. We don't know who he is. He started he was the first few years he played with the Devils. He was a good goalie. Then he went to the Sharks. The numbers were what you would expect playing for the Sharks. And then he had a nice bounce back, kind of resurgence with the Colorado Avalanche. They rewarded him with a massive extension, 5-year extension. But I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to expect from Blackwood. Now that he's in Colorado, is he the player that they acquired, or is he going to be the guy whose goals against average is typically a little above 3 and his save percentage is right around 90? Those, again, are not elite goalie numbers. So I'm going to put Blackwood 6th because I just don't know what we're going to get from him this year. And then the rest of the way, you have the Utah situation, which I guess is Kirill Vejmelka, who had, Vejmelka had some nice starts down the stretch, but Connor Ingram was, until he went to the player assistance program, he was the one that was really leading that push towards the playoffs. And the numbers the past few years have not been particularly good. He kind of rebounded into form a bit this past season, but I kind of need to see it another full season as the starter before I can put him higher on this list. So I'm ranking Vejmelka 7th, and then I'm putting Spencer Knight 8th for the same reason. So the guys at the top of this rankings list, Hellebuyck is established. He's been in Winnipeg for a long time. He's been the best goalie on the planet for a long time. Jake Oettinger is one of the best young goaltenders in the game. So he's second on the list. That's an easy choice. Filip Gustavsson 3rd. I feel really strongly about how good Filip Gustavsson is. And I think his numbers, if the Wild were even average to start the season, I think his numbers would be way better. And then all 3 seasons would look really, really good. Then you've got, UC Saros coming off of a real bad season by his standards. Is this him starting to kind of show his age, or is he going to bounce back? I have him 4th and Binnington 5th. Binnington's a good goalie, but the numbers are just pretty average. 6th, as mentioned, Vejmelka. 7th, or 6th is Blackwood. 7th, Vejmelka. And 8th, Spencer Knight, based on what we know. Subject to change, and obviously we'll take a look at this during the Olympic break to see where everybody is at. And maybe we'll do this on a monthly basis too. A little power rankings action, like, who's trending upward, who's trending downward, who's not even on the list anymore. But that's how I rank them right now. Of course, head to the comment section right now. Let me know your rankings for the Central Division starting goaltenders. 1 through 8. Where do you think Filip Gustavsson is at? Is 3 too high? 3 too low? Is 3 just right amongst the Central Division goalies? Let us know in the comments. We will finish today's episode. Obviously, Filip Gustavsson is in need of a new extension himself. So we're going to talk a little more contract talk. Oh, goody. But it's just Gus this time. So we'll do that to finish today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needs to hire somebody yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? That's easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. When I was on the job hunt last summer, that was one of my favorite parts about looking on Indeed, was you knew that when you typed in a particular field that you were looking for, that you were going to get top options right off the bat. So you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, make sure to give us a follow on YouTube. Give us a follow on whatever platform you tune in on a regular basis. And if you feel so inclined, make sure to leave us a 5-star review as well. Always helps with the circulation. And if you leave us a 5-star, we'll give you a shout out on the show. So just a fun kind of way to say thank you for tuning in as you do on a regular basis. So Filip Gustavsson is going into the final year of his contract and could be eligible for an extension should the opportunity present itself, either leading up to the season, during the season, or in the portion of the offseason that the Wild still have kind of the exclusive negotiating window. Here's what we know. We know that Filip Gustavsson has been a good goalie throughout his tenure with the Minnesota Wild. Like that can't be debated. We also know that the Minnesota Wild have Jesper Wallstedt and have signed him to a 2-year deal to be the backup for now, but the team still expects that he will be the future starter for this team. So before we dive even into the Gustafson potential extension, this is a big year for Jesper to show that he's ready at the NHL level, to more importantly shake off what happened last season. Rough year for him. I don't think the Wild helped matters by starting the season saying that he'd be traveling with the team for the whole year. I think if you simply don't say it like that, if you basically don't say, yeah, we're going to be carrying 3 goalies all year, you eliminate a lot of this. Foot in mouth seems to be kind of a common theme for not only the Minnesota Wild, but other franchises as well. But it's a big year for Jesper to bounce back, to kind of get that confidence and that swagger back, and to slide in as the capable backup this year. If Jesper is able to do that and to put up good results, to look the part, to look comfortable in the net, you may see a handoff as soon as next season for Jesper to be the starter. But if we look at how the Minnesota Wild have typically done things, I would say it's likely that there's at least one more season after this year before Jesper takes over as the full-time starter. I think the Wild just like to, as many other NHL teams do, they just like to kind of err on the side of being overly cautious before overloading a prospect with too much too soon and shattering their confidence. Now, would that be Filip Gustavsson then, who would still be driving the bus? Or would it be another goalie that's brought in on a short-term deal to show Jesper the way? Both are possibilities. Filip Gustavsson making $3.75 million this season, based on his numbers and based on just the state of the NHL and the market, he's in line for a pretty solid raise next season. So that has to be factored in before you even get to the point of looking at a deal. Are you comfortable with giving Filip Gustavsson a sizable raise based on his performance? Now, I use Jake Oettinger as an example because he has gotten both. He has received kind of a bridge deal. He has also received a large extension that he just signed that actually just kicked in, I believe, this season. Actually, it kicks in it does kick in this season. I was right the first time. So Oettinger, after he signed his entry-level contract and played through the end of the 2021-2022 season, he then signed a 3-year, $12 million deal worth $4 million per season as his next deal. And that brought him through 2022-2023, 23-24, 24-25. So he's at $4 million AAV for those 3 years. He then gets bumped up to $8.25 million per year. Signs an 8-year, $66 million deal that starts this year, takes him all the way through the 2032-2033 season. So he goes from $4 million to $8.25 million. And, that's one that I look at as that's one option. If the Wild think highly enough of Filip Gustavsson at the age of 27 that they want to go all the way through, and sign him till he's 35, 36, that is likely what that would look like. But I'm of the belief that it would probably work for both sides. Heavy emphasis on sarcasm there, because would work for both sides usually doesn't work for both sides. I kind of wonder if a bridge deal is the way to go for Gus, because Filip Gustavsson did not get to the NHL level until far later in his career. He did not get to the NHL level until the 2020-2021 season. So he got to the NHL barely as a 22-year-old. Then he got a little more of a taste as a 23-year-old. He really didn't start like full-time NHL work until the 2023-2024 season as a 24-year-old. So he is relatively new to full-time NHL work. So it wouldn't be for 4, but could you do a 3-year deal where he maybe got 5.5 or 6? Possibly. The point being is that I have said this in previous episodes. I think if you are really set on Jesper being the starter, we'll have a pretty good indication as to if he is ready for that come this season. And I heavily emphasize that there will be growing pains this year, as there are with many young players. Some come up to the NHL level and they get it immediately. That's not the norm. A lot of players struggle to kind of figure it out right away. They eventually do. Some players struggle and they never figure it out. It's all about how they themselves handle it. There's no book on how players handle things. It all depends on each individual player. But if Jesper Wallstedt does pick it up and is a quick study this year, that might mean that the Wild are willing and are comfortable with rolling the dice a little bit next year. And maybe you don't see Filip Gustavsson stick around. You maybe do something shorter too. Like, let's do one more year and kind of see how it goes. But from what Michael Russo said, the Wilds and Gustafson, they are open to extension talks. But I think we all know that there aren't going to be any other extension talks until another one gets taken care of. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, let us know in the comments where you think Filip Gustavsson should rank amongst Central Division starting goaltenders. We had him at 3. Let me know if that's too high, too low, or just right. Make sure, as we mentioned, to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.